active in over 180 countries and who directly reach an estimated 2 billion people, will believe in collective action and that bold new strategies are needed to achieve the SDGs by 2030.
Don't think we can hear Armando.
I can't hear you.
I was muted. Hi, everybody. I was looking for the moderator to see how I can spotlight her to make sure everybody's in. So glad to see everybody since the launch in May. It's been a few months and everybody went on some holidays or some breaks. So we're regrouping with more energy, with more forward perspective on how we can take some of our pillars and initiatives forward. We have some thought leaders, some forefront people who have gone ahead of us in this initiative. And we wanted to start off this to really highlight some of the people. So I'm going to ask Luvoyo to kick off. He's our co-chair in Africa. He's been really instrumental in driving some of these initiatives that we have. If you could just kind of share some thoughts of why we're here, why Africa Forward, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Wando. And just to welcome everyone. And it's so much exciting to have the first event after 11th of May, when we have an Africa Day, where the energy was so high. I mean, there's much more work has been work behind the scene, and I could see much more interest that was coming in now to say what is the next steps now. So things are happening now. So today we are shaping it. We are making it today as the first day that we'll see monthly. Every month we will have this kind of events with amazing individuals and amazing speakers now. But I just want to make sure that I acknowledge that there's quite a numbers of many social entrepreneurs in Africa and organizations that have signed the letter, and we still need some more. So if Brian, you could share on the chat to make sure that others who have not signed the letter, they are signing the letter, that would be great, because we need more numbers. And for me, it's always been Africa must have a voice. We need to come in numbers to make sure that we sign the letter for funding now. But on the Africa Forward, I mean, there are 5 pillars. There were 4 in the beginning. On our manifesto that we came in, there were 4, but there are 5 pillars. And everything that we're going to talk about, if we're going to come in, is going to focusing on these 5 pillars. It's looking at narrative shift to see how we can share the good stories about great social entrepreneurs in Africa. So it's something that we have to kind of like not be ashamed around. We talk about it and spotlight it to make sure that there's a shift. And the second pillar, it's more ecosystem development, where we have to really see some development on the social entrepreneurs in Africa. And the third one, which is much more ambitious, and I think it came in from the beginning of the first meeting in January, where we have it as the members of Catalyst, and we talk about the funding. The funding aspect is a third pillar, which is so much important. There's a plan about 3 years. It's ambitious, and it's part of the plan. A part of moving Africa forward. And the fourth pillar is creating of employment and the career counseling. That's what we know, that we've got many young people looking for employment. And the last one that we added, it's about training and the capacity development, even from the members, from the social entrepreneurs. And that makes us to be ready for as we move forward now. So I just want to make sure that thank everyone, every speaker that is going to come in, and please absorb. If any question on the chat, ask any question. It's our thing, and it just needs us to make sure that we're participating now. That's what we get the value now. So thank you so much for coming in. Thank you, Nwando.
If everybody could please mute their mics so that we can get the best possible audio at times. Thank you. Ms. Subaya, are you able to join? Maybe she's having some technical difficulties.
I am able to join, and good afternoon, everybody. Sorry for joining a bit late. You can pardon our internet connectivity in our side of the globe, and so sorry. Yeah, my name is Zubaida Ismail. I'm a journalist, freelance journalist, and an African change maker who writes stories on changing the narrative of Africa when it comes to everything: youth, employment, the potentials of the continent and all that. I'm focused on telling such stories to the world instead of the negative narrative that has been sent out. And so basically that's what I do. I'm based in Accra, and I'm humbled to be part of this program. I'm supposed to be your MC, but then the MC came in late. And so Nwando, I don't know whether you will continue from your end or I have to continue from here.
Please do the honors.
Oh, I thought you would have just done me the honors. Do I continue?
I want to hear from change makers.
Okay, so I don't know where on the program you've got into, on the agenda you've got into, but then I will run you through what I have quickly. And then, of course, I'm supposed to give you a welcome address. So I've given you a short brief of who I am. And then also to introduce you to this August meeting, which is a platform of bringing together African change makers. I mean, no one says I'm an African change maker, but just listening to the previous speaker, I know that everybody here is a change maker, and it's good to find all of you on the continent. And so today we're going to have a 1 hour strict program. Did I hear a voice there? Is someone talking? Okay, so I go on. So yes, it's a 1 hour strict program. Sorry, I'm late. We're already 12 minutes into the program. And then we're going to have some good speakers. And I know you all will be interested in knowing who our speakers are. And so as part of the program for today, we will have some thought-provoking comments or position from Mr. Mamadou Biteye. I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name right. Forgive me if I am not. But Mr. Mamadou is the Executive Secretary of the African Capacity Building Foundation, and he has expertise when it comes to agriculture. He's an economist and, of course, a development expert. And he has specialization in working for the African Union's Agency for Capacity Building. Now, Mr. Biteye also worked for Visa, where he served as the Vice President, Global Head of Inclusive Growth, and before before that, he was the regional head of social impact for the Central and Eastern Europe, Middle East, and African region. And so with these portfolios, you would agree with me that we couldn't have had a better person to engage us today than Mr. Muhammadu Bitei. We also have Moyo. Sorry, I'm unable to pronounce your first name. Forgive me, Professor. But maybe when you come on, you will be able to pronounce your first name for all of us to hear. But then we have Mr. Moyo. He's an adjunct professor with Wits Business School. He's the director of the Center on African Philanthropy and Social Investment, CAPSI. He's a writer, researcher, and a thought leader who has championed the African cause on philanthropy, contributed to the growth of many African civil society formations, and has taken part in most of the continental processes of development and governance. And so again, Professor, you're welcome to today's program, and we will be glad to have you share your expertise, your experiences working on the continent with us today. We have our last speaker for today will be Wamuyo Mahinda. I don't know if I got that also correct, but Wamuyo is the managing partner and convener for Collaborative Value Partners Africa. It's an organization that creates multi-stakeholder alliances in a structured and sustainable way to boost their combined power to ensure collaborative value. Wamuyo holds a master's degree in business administration from the University of Nairobi and a doctorate in business administration from United States International University. In her doctoral studies, Wamuyo researched team leadership and its influence on collaboration within Ashoka Fellow organizations in 19 countries in Africa. The study examined what interactions and actions embedded in team actions within organizations contribute to collective value. Wamuyo is currently the chairperson of Catalyst 2030 Kenya chapter and is a member of the Systems Learning Working Group. And so these will be our speakers for today. And so without much ado, I would want to quickly hand over the mantle. If that wasn't done before I came in, then I believe that has been done. Voyorani, you've had the introduction to Africa Forward already, right?
Yeah, no,
Yes.
I've done it. I've done it. You can go ahead now. Yeah.
Okay, so in that case, do I assume that the video context has been showed already?
You can go ahead. We already have them spotlighted, so we'll show the video after they.
Oh, okay. So then we're going to have our open session this moment, and it's going to take 5 minutes. And the topic for our open session is why Africa and why now? Maybe I want to answer why Africa and why now because of what is going on currently globally. I'm a writer for Africa No Filter, which is based in Kenya, and Africa No Filter is a journalist platform that ensures that journalists write different angles of stories from the continent. We're moving away from the bad narrative. And recently, one of the stories we have done is the West coming after Africa's gas because of what is going on in Ukraine and Russia, and the fact that there have been so many sanctions against Russia, and so the world isn't getting gas and coal and others from Russia, so they are turning to Africa. Then we ask ourselves, why now? Why did the world have to wait until there was conflict in Ukraine before they know that Africa has these resources? And as they are coming, are they coming with good intentions or with bad intentions? Are they coming to take advantage of the continent, or they are coming to do fair business? And so My answer to why Africa and why now is what I've just told you. But of course, I am not in the capacity to tell you that. And so I'm going to hand over the mantle to Mr. Mamadou Biteye to take us on his thoughts on why Africa and why now. Mr. Mamadou Biteye, are you here? You have the floor.
Yes, I am, Ms. Zubaida. Thank you and for the introduction. And I should say that you've been doing very well with the names. So that's great, no worries. And I want to thank the organizers for really giving me the opportunity to join this forum and to have the ability to share my thoughts with an impressive parterre of experts in all dimensions. And I can't thank you even more for putting me on the same panel with my friend, my dear friend, Professor Becky Moyo, actually with whom we have shared many years the struggle and the effort, and of supporting positive change and impact and change in the lives of Africans qualitatively. I think that this question about why Africa, why now, we can look at it from many different angles. There is probably no one right answer, but for sure, it is clear about what we cannot do, or what clear about what we should be mindful of. And I will talk about those two. From my perspective about why Africa, why now, I want to look at it from a human capital perspective. Africa is a young continent. We have more than half of our population actually who are youth. Just thinking about some statistics, if you take just the bracket of age, young people between 18 and 24 will grow to 200 million. That bracket only 18 to 24 to 200 million by 2050. But you don't take, you can see that real youth bulge. But to me, one of the things we need to think about is not to look at those statistics in isolation. You look at the statistics in a global environment. While we'll be growing that way and becoming the youngest continent in the world, with the youngest workforce, at the same time, Europe, America, Asia, or parts of East Asia will have a different population dynamic. More than 50% of their population will be more than 65 years old. That's the context within which we need to read this. And why now? Because we are currently and over many years have been experiencing the brain drain. Our best specialists, our biggest scientists, etc., are leaving to go. And even now, our just workforce, dying on the Mediterranean, taking boats, trying to get to Europe to a new El Dorado. 500 years ago, the most valid Africans were taken to America by force. And what I'm saying, why now, why Africa, why now, is that this is now the time to invest in our young people, to make sure that by 2050, when the rest of the world will be looking for valid workforce, we would have educated and created the enabling environment for our youth to stay in Africa and work to develop Africa. Because if we don't do that, If 500 years ago, the most valid ones were taken by force, this time, then the most valid will be going gladly to new opportunities. So that is extremely important. And why do I bring the human capital and the youth here? Because you just mentioned the mineral resources that we have and that we are continuing to discover on the continent. And we know that over time, Africa has never really benefited from its natural resources. The best extractive industries contracts give us about 10% or less from the value of what is extracted. This is why you would look around on the 55 countries, there is very few where you will see actually extractive industry leading economic or social transformation. And the reason why is that we need the know-how, we need the technology, and we need the human capital and the human capacity and expertise to be able to transform ourselves that mineral. So this is really, to me, why Africa, why now? If we are going to reap the benefits of transformation led by our people who have access to information, to knowledge, to platforms for collaboration by 2050, this is an investment we need to do now, resolutely, massively, and decisively. I will stop there. Thank you.
Sorry, I just noticed that I was muted. Thank you very much for spending your time with us and for sharing your thoughts with us on this very important topic when it comes to the topic we're discussing today, why Africa and why now. And let me just, I don't know whether this is happening in the other parts of the continent, but Ghana currently, just in the last 1 month, there has been this discussion of how our labor force is moving to the United Kingdom. And so in the last year, we've had the Ghana Health Service complaining bitterly about how nurses or health workers are leaving Ghana to go look for greener pastures, especially in the United Kingdom. And we're asking ourselves that even in that state where you have nurses voluntarily living to abroad to look for greener pastures, can't there be any system where the country benefits from these exports? Just like we export goods, can't we have a system where we have government exporting these labor, or I mean these various skills, and raking in some revenue instead of allowing individuals to chart their path and go and we get nothing back into the continent, like Cuba is doing. They export medical professionals and the country benefits from that. And so if we are going to be talking about this, I think everybody has something to say. However, it's only a few people that can lead today's discussion. And so we're going to move straight to Wamuyu Mahinda. Again, forgive me if I didn't pronounce your name well, but Wamuyu is also going to take us on the challenges and opportunities when it comes to our topic, why Africa, why now? What are they? Of course, it can't be gloomy all the time. There are definitely opportunities that we can all tap into. And so, Wamuyu Mahinda, if you are ready, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And you are pronouncing my name right. It's Wamuyu Mahinda. And I want to bring us from that global and regional perspective to the social entrepreneurs, because I'm a social entrepreneur and I have been working with social entrepreneurs in Africa. So to be able to just get the whole, understanding from what is happening globally, what's happening in Africa, and what's happening with the social entrepreneurs.
How long are you there? Are you traveling?
I'm looking at ecosystem development, and I'm wondering whether we have the same understanding of that. What is an ecosystem? So we look at it sometimes as a complex network. Sometimes we look at it as an interconnected system. And a lot of times as social entrepreneurs, we look at it as a community of people, organizations that live and that interact with each other in a specific manner. And when we look at this, we are looking at what does this development, how do we benefit from this development? Many of the members of Catalyst 2030 have come on board because they've been working alone in silos, and they say very clearly, no, we don't want to work in silos anymore. We want to collaborate and together get some good impact in what we're doing. And I'm sorry to say that, and I'll give you a small story, that coming together is not enough, that we need to do more than come together. And I'll give you a story. In 2014, I was running a youth organization. I was a CEO. And I was working in Kenya, different counties in Kenya. And we're looking at how to empower youth so that they're self-sufficient, so that they can earn enough income and so on. In 2014, very specifically, I met a Professor Monica Ayeko in the then Bondo University. It's now moved to it's changed names to Jost. And she was doing a research on cricket rearing. And after a discussion with her, I was very excited. I was like, oh my goodness, we can get all our youth growing crickets, and then we can sell, and everybody will be, it will be a win-win. And as part of that, I did some research on the demand side. Where would we take these crickets? I visited Thika because Thika has very many animal feed companies. And everybody was like, bring us that, bring the crickets tomorrow. We need 5 tons. We need, 10 metric tons. Everybody wanted the cricket. So demand was there. So I went back to Professor Ayeko. I said, let's do this. Let's grow the crickets. And Professor Ayeko told me, don't worry. Crickets, even the youth don't need farms. They can grow crickets under their beds. And since they wouldn't mind the noise, because noise will mean money tomorrow. Mm-hmm. Now, to cut a very long story short, that hasn't happened even today. And the reason is not that there was no demand. The reason was not that the research had not been done, because it had been done by Professor Ayeko and her team. And the youth were there, many youth that were interested in doing this. What we didn't have is a collective enterprise model, a model that would carry us through from ideas to the market. Can I have my slide, please? So as part of my research in Africa, where I realized that many entrepreneurs are having the same challenge. The one before this, please. Yes, this. I developed this collective enterprise model because I realized that entrepreneurs have the skills. We have technical experts. We are working with researchers. We have almost everything that we need. We have the community that wants to support us. The government is there, and in most of the cases, it's happy when we're talking about, for example, youth development. But this and many other innovations have not seen the light of day. This model, therefore, was developed to support the bringing together of all the stakeholders in a model that appreciates that there has to be a very specific mechanism that supports collaboration. Next slide. Now, how this model works is that in this particular case, I decided to use the same insects, farming insects as an example. And this is economic empowerment, very specifically. Now, in this particular model, we appreciate that there are skills on breeding and production. And we know this is happening in universities. We know even social entrepreneurs that are in this space. I know some Ashoka fellows that are working in this space. We have resources that are built in for youth development or climate change and many other areas that are in as part of this. And we have efficient technology. We even have insect mechanisms that have been developed and technologies and so on. And we have research and development happening all the time. In fact, I was a judge in the MIT's Solved Youth Challenge. And one of the winners, Triple P, is an enterprise that has come up with a way of turning waste food to larva that then becomes, brings in growth of insects that can now be harvested for this kind of thing. So there are many people in this space. The market is there. In fact, like I said, they want bulk in metric tons. So why haven't we succeeded in youth development, in alleviating poverty? We haven't even managed to ensure that we are not overharvesting omena, because that is this insects are supposed to be a substitute for omena. In fact, many organizations are using sorghum now, which needs a lot of land for to harvest enough for the kind of needs that we need, for example, in a country. The reason is very simple. Let us embrace mechanisms. And Catalyst 2030 is an organization or a body, or should I say a movement, that has come to the fore to support social entrepreneurs and other parties, including private sector parties, government, to join in a very systematic way to ensure success. Now, the collective enterprise model brings all these people together by saying, you have the expertise, let's come together and build a collective where shareholders are talking and where they're being supported by a secretariat that is the backbone. And then as they do this, they talk to government, they talk to private sector, and they embrace the market, so that all the social entrepreneurs who are part of this ecosystem benefit, because nobody is reinventing the wheel and nobody is working alone. So we come together, we bring our expertise, and then we learn from others, and together it's a win-win. And then at the end of the day, we are able to meet the SDGs that are part of that ecosystem. So this is just one such model, and there are several that have been developed by scholars, because that's what scholars do. But we want to encourage all scholars to bring what they have, and then social entrepreneurs to agree that they need to work with everybody else to ensure that there's success. And Catalyst is here to ensure that we are all working together in a systematic way and developing, or should I say, building ecosystems that have the results that we envisage. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Wamuyo Mahinda. Thank you. You said I pronounced your name right. Great. I know that I've seen some questions popping in the chat session. Of course, keep dropping your questions there. We will read them, and we will try as much as we can to seek answers from our speakers for today. And so we haven't, if I look to your questions, we will come to them. But before we do, we have one more speaker for today. I don't know whether you are also putting down your takeaways, because Madam Mahinda ended or said something that we are unable to move forward because we are not embracing mechanisms. That is my takeaway. And so I don't know what your takeaway is from what she said, and I don't know what your takeaway was from Professor's presentation as well. But definitely we have to take something with us by the end of today's conversation. And so we move to our next speaker for the day. And I will simply pronounce the last name, Moyo. And then you will help us by pronouncing the first one for us. And Moyo is also going to talk to us or share challenges on funding and the gaps. Now, before he even starts, recently there was this issue about funding for entrepreneurs. So I'm a Mandela Washington Fellow, and that platform also gives us the opportunity to apply for funding. And guess what? Sometimes the requirement, it doesn't just support small entrepreneurs. You may have to be up there before you can access these funding from the USAID and all that. And so Moyo will share with us funding opportunities, share the challenges, and of course, tell us how he has been able to maneuver through this. Moyo, you're welcome.
Thank you very much, Zubeida. So names in Africa mean a lot, and they are given for a specific context. So my name is Beginkosi. And yeah, so it's made up of two things, a noun and a verb. So Bega means to look at. And Nkosi means either, a traditional king or chief, or if you are spiritual or religious, it means your supreme being.
Oh, okay.
So Beginkosi means either you are looking up to the Lord or you are looking up to the king. In monarchies, my tribe believes so much in kings and kingdoms. So you don't do anything without the king's support or I would say guidance. So that's what my name is all about. So Beginkos. Why now is an important question because it reminds me of how I ended up in the philanthropic space. So a couple of years back when I was still studying for my PhD, I sat in a conference with one of the professors from the US, and we were both presenting on development trajectory in the continent and globally, and she kept referring to the word philanthropy all the time. And afterwards, I went to her and said, you kept using this big word philanthropy, but what you were describing seemed to mirror exactly what I was talking about, but I didn't use that word. And she said to me, I get this all the time. And essentially, philanthropy is what we do on a day-to-day basis to almost get into the space that is meant to be occupied by the market or the state. But this is really the idea that you actually intervene using your private resources for public good. And at that moment, I decided this was a very interesting topic that I should find ways of looking into. And so I went back to my supervisor for my PhD and said, I wanted this word philanthropy in my thesis. And we both argued about it. And finally, I had my way. And so little did I know that 20 years down the line, I'll be invited to this forum to talk about funding issues. So a couple of things. I'm framing my intervention based on the work that I do and the story that I've just given. I'm based at the Wits Business School, leading a center on African philanthropy and social investment. I established this center precisely because working with other private foundations, it was clear to us that Africa needed to be at a space where it addresses its own resources, but not just from a point of mobilizing them, but also how to manage them effectively for the benefit of everyone who lives in the continent. And so the center is established to bridge the gap between practice and research, policy, and implementation. And I'm happy that I'm joined by fellow panelists who are working on these issues. Mamadou is a dear friend, as I said. He also serves on the advisory board of the center. And I'm happy to meet you, Wamuyu. I was very intrigued by your modeling. At some point, I would want to learn more about it. So we do research, we provide professional training. And for this group, one of the trainings that we do is around resource mobilization and funding for mega projects. And recently we ran a project where we were training member states from different ministries in Southern Africa, giving them access to different instruments that they could utilize, whether it's from the perspective of, blended finance, impact investing, social bonds, among others. And these are some of the new instruments that any entrepreneur, social or otherwise, will have to look into when thinking about the funding gap. But I think it's important for me to tell you a bit about what I see as the current state of funding globally and in the South. So one of the things that has happened over the couple of years is that the overseas development assistance that our member states have always depended on has declined drastically. Gone are the days when member states would actually just look to the North to get their funding, especially to meet the needs for their citizens. Today, member states are competing on the same footing with civil society and the private sector for resources that are available mainly in the continent and from philanthropic sources. And so that competition for social enterprises, for NGOs, and for governments is on as we speak today. And this was exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic, which made most countries to look inwards If you look at the North and you look at even countries in the South, everyone started looking inward and wanting to take care of their citizens first before they could think about those outside. And so I think the funding environment has been made even worse by the pandemic. And we are beginning to see new areas of interest. The war in Ukraine has actually shifted and pivoted lots of funding towards there. The rise of cryptocurrencies and NFTs. Those of us who've been following money that has been going to Ukraine, you would see that a lot of resource mobilization has actually been earmarked towards the war in Ukraine. I mean, the US approved a huge budget of more than $30 billion towards the war in Ukraine. There's the rise of new areas like climate change. Traditionally, this has been the lowest in terms of getting global funding, but I think the rise of climate philanthropy indicates to us that the future of funding is going to flow towards issues to do with climate, biodiversity, issues to do with the environment precisely. And so I think that's important for us to think about that as a context in which you then locate social entrepreneurs and how they can bridge the gap in terms of their funding needs. But there are also some funding trends that I think equally are important for us to pay attention to. So the first is that internationally, the philanthropic funding has really not dropped that drastically as the overseas development assistance. So there's still some resources that we can all look towards when it comes to the philanthropic space, whether you're looking at the international foundations from the US, from the North, as well as African-based philanthropies, there's still some funding that is available. But the issue is to know what are the areas that they are interested in, what are the predominant areas, and both global and local foundations seem to be preferring specific areas of interest, one of which is health, the second is education. And then the other areas like job creation, some of the SDGs that I saw and we're referring to actually are down in terms of the prioritization of the funding trends. So if you're a social entrepreneur and you're working outside those areas, the issue is how do you frame your engagement in such a way that it also appeals to some of those dominant areas of funding that we're seeing. The second issue is that, funding tends to flow towards democratic areas in democratic countries. If you look at where most of the foundations and most of the social entrepreneurs access their funding, it's in countries where there's a semblance of democracy. There are, of course, some outliers, for example, the northern part of the DRC, that does get some funding, but that's because of the war that has been ongoing there for quite some time. But traditionally, if you're looking for funding, you've got to look into areas where there's some semblance of good governance, some semblance of democracy. And the countries that dominate in this space will be your South Africa, your Kenya, your Nigeria, to some extent Ethiopia because of the African Union and the many missions that are based there. Ghana is also another one of them. The other trend that I wanted to raise here for your attention is that we're also seeing a high growth of high net worth individuals. And these high net worth individuals are individuals whose wealth of assets starts from $1 million and above. But their trends in terms of funding are also interesting. They are looking more at funding governments. And that's what we saw in the past. But during the COVID time and research from Bridgespan and the Africa Philanthropy Forum showed that they actually responded to the COVID 10 times more than they've done in a decade. And that's because their pockets, in my view, were actually affected by COVID. So how do we appeal to these high net worth individuals and their pockets in ways that would make them want to give and not do so the way they've done in the past, where they just give to issues that are just passionate to their hearts only? And Mamadou was talking about the rise of the young people and all the challenges associated with that. And this is a big issue for us to think about and link it with the rise of high net worth individuals. There are 3 individuals in the continent whose wealth is equivalent to half the population of Africa. How do we work with high net worth individuals so that they plow back, not just to areas of their own interest, but to areas that affect the entire society? And in this case, we're interested in entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs. How do they break into that market where high net worth individuals find it very easy to support them without raising some of the questions that they currently do. So I wanted to raise that as one of the most important sources of financing, which I think we have not tapped into. Of course, the idea of pivoting into new instruments is an important one, especially for social entrepreneurs. How do we use corporates? For example, corporates have all sorts of instruments that you can utilize to access funding. There's the corporate social responsibility, but there's also shareholding, which is a new trend that is emerging in the continent, where social entrepreneurs can actually hold shares in big or emerging companies. And NGOs are actually are equally doing the same. How do we use that as a way to leverage funding? There's blended finance, where you use the combination of financial instruments from multilaterals, from bilaterals, but also from philanthropies, but also the rise of social bonds, where you actually bring NGOs or social entrepreneurs in the middle, and you've got a private sector that underwrites, and then the government that also comes in, because it was meant to do that job anyway. So I think the rise of new instruments is also an important area for social entrepreneurs to look into. But it's also important to think about how you structure your intervention, how you structure your organization. Do you structure it in such a way that it can only receive funding from the private sector, or you structure it in a way that it can receive funding from philanthropies, but equally be involved in private sector profit making? So the legal structures are also important consideration to think about beyond the mission and vision of your social enterprise. And so I wanted to raise these issues because we don't have much time just to touch on the broad areas, but we do provide at the center modules and courses on some of these things where we go deeper into issues of liquid leadership for social entrepreneurs, finance for social entrepreneurship, resource mobilization, as well as fundraising for some of these groups. So I will stop there, Madam Moderator, and hopefully we can take some questions as well. Is that a message that I should continue talking?
No, I don't. Very thought-provoking and very, very great insights, and challenging actually on opportunities that are available. I'm not sure if we lost her. I think her internet might have gone out. That's another topic that we have, is how we can access the access that we need to be able to take the opportunity. Okay, I see her come in.
Yes,
I think
I'm back. You forgive me. My internet is actually messing up today, and it's been raining a bit in Ghana too. So I think that's contributing to that. So Bekin Kosi Moyo. Did I get the name right this time around? Thank you for engaging with us, and of course for sharing your thoughts on funding through this process. It's time for questions and answers. Our participants, if you have any question, you can raise your hand. We have less than 10 minutes to go, but then we can give you the opportunity to ask your question directly to the speakers, and of course to any of the team members of Catalyst 2030 who will be able to answer your question. And so yeah, it's question time. But then we have a few comments in the comment section that I would want to run us through whilst we wait for people to raise their hands if they have questions to ask. And so with your permission, we want to read some of the comments that have come in through. And so, of course, we'll be humbled to know that we have people participating from Rwanda, from Kenya, from South Africa, from Nigeria, from Ghana. And we have one that is just a comment, and the person says, my name is Uwezewa Rachel from Rwanda. I am happy to be here. So Rwanda, the Catalyst 2030 team is also happy to have you here. We have a question or a comment from Laura. Laura says the country may benefit from exporting labor, but how much of that goes back into the government's coffers and ends up not trickling down to the people? There are pros and cons to these strategies. Personally, I believe we need to encourage these skills to stay within the country. If we can't pay them more, then we need to provide incentives such as housing and education subsidies. This way, great skills stay in the country and innovation is encouraged because stimulated minds remain local. That's a message from Laura. We have John Kama. John says, what could African governments do differently to attract Africans stay in Africa to work and develop it, as opposed to young Africans being trafficked abroad in pursuit of better living conditions? Well, I think people are so interested in that comment I made about our brothers and sisters leaving the continent to give their skills to other parts of the globe. Linda says, I agree with Laura, Africa needs these skills anyway. We have the resources in abundance and that need to be developed for our economies. We even have skills gaps in many areas. Example, transition to green economy. We have Rosemary Okelu. How can we make African governments to embrace the use of research and innovation in decision-making, as in the case of Professor Monique?
I think we lost her. Am I right? Okay, great. Does anybody have questions while she was reading the expressions? If you could put your hand up, some burning questions while we have this esteemed panel. That way we can get right directly to it. Somebody had some insights or wanted more information from the great chart from.
I think I can comment on that comment, or rather add some meat to that comment about working with government and ensuring that government supports like research work done by Professor Ayeko. We did, Catalyst 2030 did a research with McKinsey that we call New Allies, which is a research that is, should I say, a handbook that is supporting, should I say, entrepreneurs to work with government. And we have been implementing that in Kenya with my team at the Kenya office. And we've been having discussions with government where we are saying social entrepreneurs do have answers. Researchers do have answers to some of the challenges that we're facing as a country, but the government has not opened its eyes to those answers or those opportunities that come from citizens in those countries. And we are seeing good response. In fact, we're just waiting for the new government to settle because the conversation has led to a point where we are going to be sitting at the table to see how we can, should I say, push the what we have as social entrepreneurs in Kenya so that the government does not reinvent the wheel, but rather comes to us for solutions. And for example, just giving an example, Ministry of Lands, they wanted skills for housing, and those skills were with our social entrepreneurs. So instead of going wherever they could have gone, they came to us, and through our social entrepreneurs, we were able to skill, use skills, upskill, use skills to meet the needs of the Ministry of Housing in a big project where they want to employ 10,000 youth. Just as an example. So it is doable, but there has to be an intention. We have to do it intentionally and use knowledge and experience and research to prove that what we are saying can work and will work. Thank you.
Yeah, Wando, are you going on with that? So I pick it up from there.
Please do.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mahinda, and then of course from the team. Do we have more questions? I doubt if we do. And so if we do not have more questions, I would want to believe that not having more questions does not mean that people are not interested. It means that your presentations and your communications were well done, and then people have consumed it. And so I think people are satisfied with what they have listened today. And that is why we do not have more. And of course, there is a comment here that goes to affirm what I just said. So Geoffrey Mulenga says that was a great discussion. And so perhaps that is why we don't have much questions, because people are satisfied. And on that note, we would want to give the floor to Rani to give us his closing remarks.
Thank you so much, Zubeida. You've been amazing, and I wish and I hope that this is not end here. We will have much more profiling and positioning. This has been amazing session that we have it as a first start. So you've done amazing work now. To Mr. Mamadou, I really believe that there has to be a follow-up discussion, and you speak to the pillar around the youth, that more than anything, we have to invest in the young people so that we can able to make sure that in years to come, we see the investment. That's way lever that we could make it. So we really appreciate it. And as a catalyst, we will follow up in terms of seeing how can we able to make sure that it's not talking around what we're talking about. There's a kind of like a follow-up that we could talk about as part of as the pillar now. And Mamuyo, as we drive this together, it's just to see amazing you to see other side where you share the collective enterprise model. And I really appreciate, listening to you and able to share your modeling. And I really appreciate Mamuyo in terms of like the leadership that we are providing from Kenya, chapter as an Africa chapter, and also been working behind the scenes so tirelessly and driving, and nothing else that can happen for us to work collectively. That's kind of how we can make this thing much more better. And Prof Begingosi, Enkosi, Siyabonga for the great kind of sharing, source of funding, flow of money, the trends, in terms of how the next network individuals. In fact, we do have a South Africa chapter, and then we have to link it to say, how can we work with your kind of like in terms of the vets around capacity building, not only for South Africa, for Africa, because I believe there's a huge opportunity for this collaboration now, because Catalyst is probably about 260 members that are part of the social entrepreneurs in Africa. That's kind of become amazing that can be part of the benefit now. So for today, just like for you to expose that this is a movement of social entrepreneurs in Africa that we want to able to work with you now. So thank you for the speakers for being as the first pioneer Africa Forward. You were relevant, you were part of speaking each and every pillar, and we are appreciating, and you must know that you're the first one to pave the way for the Africa chapter now. And say sorry to the members who raised their hand. They could not able to ask the question because of the time. We know it's a first. We will do better next time to make sure that we allow more hands so that we can ask. So please bear with us. And the only thing that I will ask, please reach out to Daniela or to Brian for more suggestions, for more speakers, because we want to hear your feedback. We want to make sure that we do better, and then we can do better in terms of what we are doing now. So thank you, Mwanda. Thank you, everyone who's behind the scene for this. And we're going to see next month for September, we're going to save another one on the 25th of September, because we want to make sure that we maintain and the rhythm that we are, and go to the website and get more information and be part of this amazing movement. But it's a great way to start. Thank you once again, much appreciated.
Thank you very much, Rani. And with your permissions, with your sincere permissions, I've seen this hand has been up for too long. Maybe we just allow her to just say what she wants to say. Samukela, are you there? I've seen your hand has been up for a while. Quick one. We just give you 2 minutes to tell us what you want to tell us. So ask your question.
Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, my question was answered. So I sent a question to the chat and was answered. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much then. Just so we know that we didn't leave you out since your hand has been up for that long. Just like Ronnie has said, the conversation does not end here. Do us the honors by going onto the various social media platforms of Catalyst 2030 and then link us up, chat to us, send us DMs, tell us your feedback for today's session. And of course, we are willing to learn and upgrade ourselves. And so do not end this conversation here. But before we say goodbye to each other, I would like to acknowledge, of course, all these persons definitely were mentioned, but maybe because I joined late, I just want to take this opportunity to also appreciate the presence of all the Africa chapter leads of the Catalyst 2030 project. Of course, we have just heard from Rani, who is the South Africa lead. We heard from Wamuyu Mahinda, who is from Kenya, Angela Benson, Liberia, and we also had Emme Inyekun. I don't know whether I got the name right, but then my sister from Nigeria. And so all of you made this session today possible. And we do appreciate your contributions, and hopefully we would continue this conversation on the social media platforms. Thank you for being part of today's session, and we say asante sana.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Yeah.
Asante.
Thank you. Asante sana.